Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest is Jim Smid. He's a principal architect for the DoD and intelligence community at Palo Alto Networks. Jim, good to have you with us again.
Thanks for having me.
This whole idea of artificial intelligence is really just redefining what we know about information technology, and especially our topic today, cybersecurity and AI, but maybe a few definitions of the flavors of AI because they're still emerging.
Sure, absolutely. I think it just gets thrown around as an umbrella tool that can be used interchangeably for a lot of different meanings. From cybersecurity, we've been using artificial intelligence for over a decade. Machine learning, for example, has been used for doing malware detection. I think most people think of that when they think of cybersecurity and machine learning, but we continue to use that in all of our tools today. There isn't a tool in the Palo Alto Networks arsenal that doesn't use AI in a lot of different flavors. So we still use machine learning for getting visibility. So whether that's identifying IoT devices that are hanging off of your network, or whether it's baselining for an anomaly detection. So we do a lot of cloud native things and partnership with AWS. And you need to be able to, as you create new applications, you need to baseline what those look like. That way, when they're delivered in a runtime environment, you can see if there's an anomaly, what are they doing that they should or shouldn't be doing. And lastly, we're getting a lot more agentic AI. So the idea that the tools should be able to do things on their own, so act in an autonomous way. And you certainly want that to do it at the machine speed. You don't want to wait for, if you know there's an attack, you don't want to wait until somebody has looked at it or made a decision or pushed a button. You want to mitigate that attack as quickly as possible. There's actually one other piece that I think, because I work with the DoD, we work with operators that come and go and they maybe don't have as much experience as in industry. So I get asked all the time, how do we do training for those operators? How do we get them efficient at the tools very quickly? And that's really where I think AI has made a huge difference for them, because they can have co-pilots. The idea that the tool itself will help and coach you on best practices, and the idea that you can use your own natural language to query the tools and ask questions and to get things in layman's terms. So that's really expedited how much we can get these operators effective very quickly.
Yes, there's some really practical, down-to-earth applications here. It's not all up there in the esoteric.
Absolutely.
Interesting. All right. Well, you also work closely with AWS as a partner in delivering AI-empowered cybersecurity services. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's been a great partnership through the years. Not only do we do a lot for protecting what we would think of normally as compute and network resources, but also how do you manage all of those pieces. There's telemetry information that we partner very closely with AWS, so we get that single pane of glass and that visibility. So we're taking information from a partner like AWS and combining that. It's so critical for AI to take tools, all the different information, and be able to stitch that information together. It's the contextual analysis of that information. So you may have something that looks pretty rudimentary, but when you combine it with several other factors, that's where kind of the really important part of it comes out, in the critical nature of that from an attack surface perspective. And also for, all of our customers are moving more and more applications to the cloud. We have these very large software factories creating brand new applications. They want to move those to the cloud, and that means that the attackers have recognized and they've moved more of their attacks towards an AWS. They know that's where those applications and workloads reside. So how do we protect that holistically? And everything at Palo Alto Networks we attack from a platform perspective, which means I want visibility of your runtime environment, but I want to be able to go all the way back to the software factory and that creation, because if I can eliminate problems where they start in code and before they get deployed into the runtime environment, I can really do over a 90% reduction of those number of vulnerabilities. And that's what our customers are fighting with the most. When you are inundated with that many different exposures or vulnerabilities, how do you triage it and how do you focus on what's important? So helping our customers leverage the cloud and AWS and do that in a secure way, that partnership really shines.
And of course, a lot of development and software factory work for federal agencies is done under contract, not necessarily by the organization itself. Maybe there's more development done in DoD, perhaps, where you're concentrating. But can all of this activity and capability between Palo Alto Networks and AWS be brought to bear on third parties that are working for the government agency that you're working with?
Yeah, it's just really about having consistency, and you want those developers, irregardless of whether they are employees or whether they are contractors. How do you have consistency in terms of getting visibility? What does that supply chain look like? Where does the code come from? Are the containers that they're using, are they secure? Are the libraries secure? Are there secrets being embedded to the code? That's a crutch that a lot of times that we have a coder will do. They'll put a password in, or they'll put an IP address, they'll hard code things into it. So having consistency that irregardless of where that code is coming from, when it goes through that CI/CD phase where we're starting to integrate it and put it into runtime, how do we make sure we get that visibility and do it soup to nuts with a single pane of glass, irregardless of whether that is in the runtime environment or the code environment?
Got it. So therefore, AI can help you in that activity also.
Certainly, and I think one of the critical pieces is really that having that machine learning part of it as you get these new applications. So much of what we have is from an insider or from a trusted source, and how do you do that anomaly and the baselining of what those new tools and applications look like? So AI is certainly used in a lot of different ways to look at in your runtime environment applications and workloads that it understands and knows and expects it to run a certain way, or how do I baseline something I've never seen before and protect that as well.
And in response end of cybersecurity situations, tell us more about AI and Palo Alto and AWS, and how does this all come together in the SOC environment downstream from development and deployment and runtime. You've still got ongoing attacks.
Yeah, that's a big question because there's a lot that goes into it. Because I work with the DoD, a lot of times I liken things back to the zero trust model. And you have some of the traditional cybersecurity in the first 5 pillars. And things like network, things like the devices, the users, the data itself, and all of those need to be able to be sharing data and be working in concert together. But downstream of that, you need to integrate them. And pillar 6, that automation side, about how do you tie all those together, I think that is, when I talk to my DoD leadership, that's probably the most important thing. They want to consolidate the number of tools, but very importantly, they need to integrate whatever's left and have it sharing data very closely. And once you have that, then you can start downstream, get to the SOC, and I come from an operations background, so that's near and dear to my heart. Everything I do in the first 5 pillars, that's where I start measuring my effectiveness and what's my mean time to detect and my mean time to respond. If those aren't effective, we have a window of opportunity to catch an adversary that is shrinking dramatically. We have really on average just a few hours now to catch somebody before they get to exfiltration. And that's a whole different can of worms to deal with an attack that has gone all the way through exfiltration. I need to catch them before that. And that's where not only having a lot of the data, being able to normalize it, stitch it together, contextualize it, and then feed it into AI models, and then be able to move it to an automation standpoint and a workflow and orchestration and get the operators themselves involved. When you can put the tools and the capabilities in front of a SOC operator and they can eliminate a lot of the manual portion of doing that contextual analysis and triaging what's important, that's how you start to measure it, and that's when their eyes open and they recognize you can't deal with the sheer volume of what's coming at you. Some of the other speakers talked about the sophistication, how much better they are looking, and how much more difficult it is to identify what some of these attacks look like. So kind of all these tools come to a confluence of I need to make my operators really effective. And And it's all those tools working effectively.
Right, you really need all of those steps, the normalizing, the contextualizing, and so on, and developing a response to happen at machine speed.
Yeah.
Because, as you mentioned, you don't have much time before the exfiltration begins.
Absolutely.
And is there also an element of, you would hope, that if one DoD component is dealing with something in that manner, that data, that learning would get promulgated to all of the DoD? In other words, if something's happening in the Navy, they would want to make sure they're helping out the Army and the Air Force. I mean, we hope that happens.
There's a number of different ways to go about, and you kind of just touched on threat intelligence across from an industry standpoint. You know, how do we take the expertise that Palo Alto Networks has? If data is really critical, we've been collecting data for over a decade. We have one of the largest data analytics engines in the world. We analyze 11 petabytes of new data every day. We're seeing billions of different kinds of attacks. We're seeing close to 3 million zero-day attacks every single day on average. So those are attacks that have never been seen before. The only way to address those is with machine learning, with AI, with all these tools put together. And how do you take then what we learn from best practices and inject it back into the tools? The idea that the tools themselves should be getting better. And it certainly addresses then at the individual customers level, things that we learn in one place, how do we replicate that other places? And for the DoD in particular, it gets more complex because you even have the idea of kind of the mothership and the enterprise and how they're dealing with cybersecurity. But what if I have to tactically be able to deploy and make them effective and still have security and things built in? So there's tools we've done from an automation side to help with that. How do they share information they learn at the tactical level and bring that back and be able to disseminate that to the rest of the overall enterprise?
Sure. And then AWS itself has a lot of tools that it makes available to customers, and you have kind of a value-added role there.
Absolutely.
From Palo Alto in helping clients use those tools better.
Yeah, I think it's part of the DNA of when we put our platform together. We want you to leverage the tools that you do have in place. There is no vendor that has a holistic, they can do everything from a zero trust, and then you start to add in what AWS does from a cloud provider perspective, and whether that's genAI tools or whether it's the network and the compute and all the things you traditionally think of. How do we leverage those, and then how do we collect that data? So much, again, goes into the integration side, and that's why it's so critical that we partner well with AWS, and we understand what telemetry information that is, and then how do we inject that, stitch it, and correlate that with information we may be getting from our own tools from a network side, or even tools that are doing content or user information. So our tools, our network tools, which is really where a lot of the enforcement happens, they do application ID, user ID, device ID, content ID. So combine that with what we're doing at the network, and you have the first 5 pillars, right? And those are all working in conjunction with each other. And we do a lot of that with AWS and make sure we leverage what information we're able to get.
And in Palo Alto's own development of tools and strategies for clients, AI is helping you get to the AI state they need to be in.
Absolutely. There's a couple different areas of that. One is in the software factory side that we talked about, but I think more importantly, this adoption of AI has become really, really prevalent. Even in the DoD, they're trying to figure out how do they leverage it. It's a very powerful tool to stay competitive, to realize the efficiencies that they need to, but how do they do that in a way and keep it safe? And first of all, it's about visibility. How do I understand? Because we see all that network traffic, we're able to very quickly and easily be able to disseminate that information to an operator to see which tools are in use, how much data is going through them, how safe are those tools inherently, and start to be able to apply security to that and limit who can use it, which tools you don't want used, and then to get into a more granular level of how do you protect the runtime environment for those tools. GenAI tools are very complex. It's more than we think of for other applications. You have the models, the data sets themselves. How do you do the posture side of that? How do you make sure that's all staying safe? How do you do things like penetration testing or red teaming? So that we use AI to constantly kind of do attacks instead of waiting once a quarter to go and do any kind of pen testing on your application. The tool itself is constantly looking for things like that. How do you look at the different agents? So much goes into how do you effectively do it, and it even bleeds into what happens at the edge and the user itself, because the way we interact with these applications happens at the browser level. And so we have a tool for a secure enterprise browser where we can start to get a level of granularity right down to your screen that would dictate things around data loss or printing or redacting information, what applications you have access to. A very high level of sophistication on that layer 7 and what the applications themselves, how do we apply security.
And so the time to get with the program is right now.
Absolutely. It's like the best time to plant a tree 10 years ago or today.
All right. Jim Smid is a principal architect for the DoD and intelligence community at Palo Alto Networks. I'm Tom Temin. You've been watching the series Accelerate Together, Secure by AI. For more on this discussion, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Accelerate Together.